Yeah, and okay, there we go. Third panelist, Katie. She's co-founder of HigherDOSE. I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is Alec, founder of Subtle, and I'm very honored to be on the panel with these two great founders. So, Eric, Katie, how about you introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'm Eric. I am the founder and CEO of Mockingbird. We sell baby gear, strollers, and accessories, that kind of thing. Was at Harry's on the growth side before starting Mockingbird, and then been at this for about six years.
I'm Katie Kaps, co-founder, co-CEO of HigherDOSE. We're a wellness tech company known for our infrared sauna blankets, our red light face masks, and our infrared PEMF mats. We started off as spa locations in New York City, and now we're mostly direct to consumer and also expanding our omni-channel efforts, and we just launched in Sephora a couple days ago.
Oh, wow. Congrats. So, Katie, tell me, when did you start HigherDOSE, and at what point did you look for outside financing?
Sure. So my co-founder and I met in 2014, actually, so quite a while ago. And we originally started off by selling infrared heating systems into yoga studios, which was not a very good business model because yoga studios don't have a lot of money. But then we pivoted to a location-based infrared sauna spa that was kind of like, think tanning salon, but with infrared saunas in the rooms instead of tanning beds. And we needed a little bit of outside capital to get that concept going. We started as a space within a space, so we were able to just get going with about $100,000 in friends and family money. But we started to seriously need some more outside capital when we switched over to product because, as you know, you need to build up inventory. And that was probably around 2018 when we really started to build out the product business.
And Eric?
So we, Mockingbird launched in February of 2019 and had raised a bit of institutional capital, about $2 million at that point. And I think was kind of fully under the impression we were going to be like running the playbook of, try to grow and raise more, seed A, B, C. But then we were, let's see, I'm just thinking back to, I'm the very much like the pessimist of like, no one's going to buy this. So I remember at the very beginning, bought very, very little product, just figuring like selling to parents, there's just this long process to build the trust and gain any momentum. And remember, fortunately, being very positively surprised by how quickly we were selling, but then we had no product to sell. And we very quickly tried to build like a pre-order function while we were out of stock, and then kind of had a very happy surprise in realizing that parents are planning very far in advance for this purchase. And so it was like, we were always kind of chasing our tail, always on pre-order, but we kept growing even with that model, and it kind of led to almost like our customers funding our growth in a nice way, where we were shipping 4, 8, sometimes even 12 weeks after collecting payment from the customer, and so that really fueled us for the first like year or two. I remember we like then built like a customize your ship date feature to go even more in, and people were like customizing their ship date like 6 months after ordering it, because again, a lot of times parents don't actually need the product for a little while. So we didn't look for outside financing till maybe 2 years after launching the brand, and we had grown like, I think maybe we had done like 3 or 4 million our first year, and then just with that kind of pre-order self-financing kind of, I think we did like 14 or 15 million the next year, and then hit this point where we were like, we gotta be in stock. Like this isn't like a long-term solution. And I mean, pre-order is great for cash, but eventually like it catches up to you from like a CX perspective and product perspective. So I think it was around that moment that we started looking at, okay, we need to get ahead of this and start buying enough inventory so we can consistently stay in stock.
So with that, what kind of financing did you look at, and like How would you kind of think about the differences between the offers?
So when we, at that point, I think, like I said, originally I was thinking, I think we absolutely would have gone like the equity route. And the nice thing, like we had that momentum to, I think there's like a right for some of the alternative financing products that have come about now where like, I think with momentum and enough kind of steam underneath the business, there's, I think, obviously more flexibility when it comes to capital. And so we were able to look at more like, instead of just the institutional equity side, we were able to look at like bank debt and venture debt and settle and like, payables financing, stuff like that. So I feel like that was kind of the zone that we were kind of looking at, ABLs, anything like that, where it was more based on like the performance of the business or existing cash position versus on the equity side.
And you, Katie?
Yeah, I think it was, a situation where we definitely didn't want to take on any financing that required a personal guarantee. That was a big no way. So the options kind of boiled down to the Amex merchant financing option. Since we had locations, they were funding retail businesses. And at the time, we had 11 spa locations. So we used that to get an Amex loan. And then, the usual suspects like Shopify Capital, PayPal, just based on the beginning of our e-commerce business, we are eligible for some funding through those platforms. But the rates were really high, but we just, wanted to go with kind of the easiest option at the time. So we went with that.
As both of your companies have continued to grow, what has been the biggest obstacle for managing your cash flow?
Yeah, I think especially when the pandemic hit, the demand for our products skyrocketed. And we just didn't have the capital structure in place to really keep up with demand. So we quickly were outgrowing the Shopify options, and actually Amex dumped us because once the pandemic hit and all the retail locations shut down, they pretty much got rid of their financing program. So we had to scramble and piece together whatever we could. But again, we are kind of outgrowing Shopify and PayPal. So once we got introduced to you, that was amazing because you guys gave us the biggest line of credit by far. And that is really the reason that we've been able to grow as quickly as we have. And prior to that, I was really worried about how we were going to keep up the growth.
I think where my mind went was just with physical products, exactly like you said, whenever there's unexpected demand, whether that's more or less than you expected, and if we're being honest, it's just you're always wrong. With physical product, I just think it just every single week or month or however often you're placing POs, you're just taking a gamble and you will be wrong 100% of the time, and that just sucks. From a cash flow management perspective, that is the biggest challenge, is just how wrong will we be and how much will that cost us, the cost of that decision. And especially with longer lead times, and the last couple of years have been never a dull moment in terms of supply chain dynamics. So just navigating through that, trying to, I guess, take bets that feel defensible and justifiable, and try to learn when you're wrong has been the goal. But yeah, it's just been really challenging.
Eric, what kind of tools or methods do you use to manage your cash flow?
I used to be nothing. I feel like I look back at truly cash flow I feel like I was looking at the bank balance being I'm managing cash flow by seeing what we have. And, so I think now there's not, I sometimes wish we were a little more sophisticated in how we approached it. I think it really just comes down to some combination of QuickBooks and Excel. Try to just say, what do we have now, and try to just get a sense of what do you think the business is going to do over the next, however long the period is that you're looking at. Whether, usually we're looking at least 6 months out, and trying to say, however many of the, payables we can confidently forecast and then what we think is going to happen in the business and just take your pluses and minuses. That's cash flow management. And then trying to put this like stack together of various forms of like financing and debt to try to kind of cover your bases and make the most with what you have. But so for us, it is just like some sense of modeling and then a combination of the various forms of financing we have at our disposal from, like I said, bank debt, venture debt, settle, like and trying to just use those together to get as far as we can.
And for this Excel document, is like a weekly thing, daily thing?
Right now, bi-monthly.
Katie, how about you?
Well, so it's interesting because we do about 50% of our business around the holidays. So leading up to Black Friday, Cyber Monday, it's kind of a big cash crunch for us because obviously we've had to lay out a bunch of cash for the inventory, but we don't have the sales coming in yet. So starting around this time of year, we have a daily cash flow model just to make sure that we're tracking to hit all of our obligations. So that's been extremely helpful, and just hiring a really good CFO to keep tabs on all of that, as well as actually working with your team. I think we have a call like every 2 weeks, especially around the holidays, just to make sure that we're tracking to hit our payments. And you guys have been really flexible with us in terms of like, if we know we have a big sale coming and pushing out payments so that we can pay you back in a time that makes sense.
Stuff I didn't even know about. So I know investors have definitely been pressuring me to like get to profitability, and that's kind of like the new normal, new dynamic. How do you guys think about profitability?
Yeah, I think we have really focused on profitability since the beginning. We were like break even, I think, by the end of our first year, and have really tried to just stay lean and mean and focus a lot on unit economics. And I think that's like, all the cash flow management tricks and hacks can't cover up bad profitability. Like, if anything, they can kind of make it worse because you can think that you're in a good spot when you're like me, just looking at a bank balance, and then maybe that bank balance is going up and you're like, wow, we're killing it. But if underneath the hood, you're like on a profitability basis, like actually losing money, that will catch up to you. And we've seen that, like even in our, I say we're focused on profitability, but we've had challenges with that, of course, and like anyone else. So I would say prioritize a focus on profitability first and foremost, and then cash flow is almost just kind of the tool to make sure that you can make the bets and run the business operationally, but as long as it's sitting atop like a strong foundation of sound kind of unit economics.
Yeah, just on that, I think it's all about margins for us. When we originally started the product side of the business, neither my co-founder or myself had a background in that. We are just kind of responding to demand from our customer base for sauna blankets. So without a lot of thought, we just launched that product. We were excited people were buying them without thinking about the sustainability of keeping that side of the business going. And we got to a point where it just felt like we were kind of like running in place, but not getting anywhere. So we're like, right, we really have to improve the margins here. And we've been working through that the last year, and it's been a total game changer for our business.
Katie, any advice for founders?
That's really open-ended.
Give us the best you got.
Make sure you have a good self-care practice because it's very demanding being a founder. And luckily, I'm killing two birds with one stone, given the nature of my startup. But that would be my advice.
I would say, with thinking specifically about cash flow right now, I feel like the advice I would give is maybe first and foremost what I was just saying before about like profitability over cash flow. But the other place my mind went was just being, like I do think about it as taking bets. Like every time we pull from Settle, or like have Settle help us with an extended payable, it's like in my mind that is a bet, and you're basically trying to make some calculation that the cost of the interest with Settle is going to be less than whatever the return is that you're getting from that bet, whether that's an inventory purchase or a marketing campaign or whatever it is. And so I do believe fundamentally, like I said before, you will always be wrong. So I don't think that strategy is like try to be right more and more often, but I do think it's like the strategy should at least be like making that bet clear. Like say it to yourself or your team and write it down and say like, this is the thing that I believe is going to happen. And like buying this inventory will, we will sell through this in X months and that will generate this amount of profit. And that is more than the X percent of interest that we're paying. And like have every cash flow decision have that kind of prediction and then evaluation after. And hopefully that will get you over time a little more accurate over time. But it can't happen if you're just kind of like blindfolding and just like running faster and kind of always chasing your tail, which it sounds obvious, but I feel like it is the default mode if you're not like being really diligent about like stating those bets and then seeing how they work out.
Yeah, I love that. I'd love to open it up to some questions for these founders, if anybody has any. Zach?
So this is for either or both of you, but could you share a little bit about that first sort of oh shit moment? Like when you realized you needed capital or you needed to approach your unit economics differently or something. Katie, like I really love that story about the blankets. Like, I don't know, I would love to hear a little more from either of you on that.
There's so many oh shit moments. Like thinking we're gonna go bankrupt 4 times. I would say because we started so lean and we've never really raised a lot of money, I had to do like a lot of the CFO work for, 7 or 8 years. And that just became super burdensome. So I think my real the terrible moment was like before the holidays or around the holidays 4 or 5 years ago. And we didn't sell enough to cover our upcoming debt obligations. So fast forward to now, our financial planning is in a completely different place. So I would say CFO is a key hire to avoid moments like that.
Yeah, I will second that. I've been a lot more at ease since having a head of finance, so that it's not just me looking at bank balances with not that much of an idea of what I'm doing. But I feel like definitely a number of those oh shit moments, and especially, I think this goes for anyone in a startup, and you often get a lot of that deep commitment and passion where everyone will feel that. But I think especially in the founder position, like that weighs heavy, and we have been in those spots where I thought it was over and we were going to run out of money and everything was, it's going to just all coming to a crashing end. So I don't know. I mean, I guess if anything, there's the consolation of like they happen, and even with companies, I think that might look like they've got everything together. I think a lot of times underneath the hood, like everyone's had that oh shit moment. And I guess it's just a matter of like trying to get creative and maybe like put the right relationships in place. Like maybe that's one takeaway. Like you said, you've worked with the Settle team to try to get some concessions here or there, or like I'm sure with suppliers, like you often have a little bit of give and take so that in those oh shit moments, at least you have some flexibility to call upon, and there's some trust and relationships built, and knowledge of the business and the workings of the business, so that they're not like learning at that worst moment in time, like how your business works. So we try to invest a lot in the relationships with anyone that we are relying on for any sort of like key capital movements. But all of that to say is like those moments happen and they're awful.
Hi, my name's Courtney. I'm the founder of Nori, also a hardware brand, so feel a lot of your pain points. But more than like 50-60% of our revenue also occurs in Q4. So right now we're in this heavy inventory investment window. We've started to rely on some alternative forms of financing, but was just wondering, like across all the areas of optimization that you're trying to prioritize, is there one lever that's been most successful? That meaning, like, is it renegotiating the payment terms with your suppliers? Is it trying to get the lowest possible interest rate? Is it trying to get the longest payback window? I think right now we're just trying to figure out like what is the most important lever to look for when trying to secure this financing.
Yeah, I was gonna say suppliers 100%. Like, I think maybe two things: the access to the most flexible debt possible. I would even say flexible over interest rate optimization, just like because to expect the unexpected, then it's more about like, I think sometimes you can throw money at the problem, and in this case, money being just like interest, where like we've taken some stupid like interest rates, but at the end of the day, I wouldn't have done it differently. But the access to the largest lines or the most flexible lines, I think is something we look back on as like something we were really lucky to have prioritized, or like feel good about prioritizing. And then definitely suppliers. I think that's, I mean, by far the biggest swings up or down from a cash perspective are based on inventory for us. And so it's for us, it's different for every supplier, let alone industry, but for us, it's been less about like the on paper terms in terms of like net this or that, but like more just, again, that relationship side of like, if that moment happens, and yeah, holiday is a great example of when that moment may be more likely to happen, but just knowing that you can kind of call them up, have a conversation, and like make it a human interaction more so than just like an on paper one. That's been the biggest for sure for us.
Yeah, agreed. I think we hired a head of supply chain who was just a master negotiator. And that was the first thing he did, is he went in and negotiated terms with our suppliers. So instead of, you know, like 50 upfront, 50 when it hits the warehouse, he got it down to like 20 or 15% upfront. And that's also been a total game changer in terms of bootstrapping and growing a lot without a lot of outside capital.
I received this mic before the last question was asked, but it was actually, my question is very similar to Courtney's question in terms of working with your suppliers to understand what those payment term options are. And I'd love to hear more about your master negotiator's approach to negotiating the best payment terms possible with you, or open to sharing.
Maybe I should shadow him more when he's doing his negotiations. I don't know, but I always come back and I'm like, really? You got them to agree to that? So if you shoot me an email after this, Katie at HigherDOSE, I'll put you in touch with him. He's a friendly guy.
I'll throw one tactic that I now shout from the rooftops because it worked well for us, which was like it's a lot easier to get a hypothetical commitment we found of like some future promise. And so we had really shitty terms with one particular supplier I'm thinking about, like upfront. And the biggest thing we were like, the unlock was not kind of trying to hold them against another supplier and say like, they're giving us net 30 or whatever. It was fine, we'll take these terms up front, but if we hit certain milestones or after some amount of time, for us there's like this very clear like milestone-based approach, then you have like a pre-agreed tiered structure of terms changes. And like, it just felt like we got the yes on that so much easier than getting to a yes on any changes to like what's happening right now. And I think maybe that's just like a psychology thing of people are more willing to agree to something that's like far out and like probably never going to happen. And then when it happens, you're so glad that it did. So take that or leave it. But like that concept of building it in when you're signing that agreement up front to something that might be months or years from then, that's been a really key like change for us.
All right. Thank you, Eric, Katie, and Eric. That was great. All right, our last panel of the day is going to